darker blue swath during the day than at night.
This one here?
Well,
This one here?
Yeah.
There are a lot of little trips that people take. I can tell you that as we break these down into the constituent days, there's a lot of trips that take place during weekends in the middle of the day where people, they've slept in and they go out about their business and they take a lot of little short trips and just get stuff done. So
you're looking for wide areas for charging?
well, I think charging opportunities as we begin to look, interesting work environment, because that's also at a time when the utilities have not yet reached peak demand, sort of at noon during the course of the day. So there's an opportunity working with the utilities and the smart grid concepts to find those opportune times. Now, we said, okay, given some hypotheses around the work environment, what if a portion of the vehicles were able to get a partial charge? What would that do to that original distribution of the green and the blue, the electric versus the extended? And over here, remember I said earlier that 35% of the customers on just a single charge overnight don't need to consume any gasoline. With just a portion of the vehicles doing a partial charge while they're working in the morning, that darker green expansion is, again, additional new electric range. And this actually turns out to be north of 50% of the vehicles now don't need to spend gasoline at this stage. And so, the real issue is, at the end of the day, to use a cliche, is how well am I going to feel confident that the needs that I have for myself and my family to get around town, to run the errands that I have, to do the things that I need to do, how well is a particular vehicle solution going to be for me? And so, our data analysis confirms that the Volt solution will give customers the confidence they need. And so when you get into a Volt with its 40 miles of electric range and then continued extended range, you're going to feel like you do when you see a full tank of gas, going on a trip. Other alternate solutions for the typical electric vehicle, you're actually not going to get the 3/4 of the tank because you can't. And you're going to start with less than a quarter tank. And how do you feel when you get into a vehicle with just that amount of gasoline? You don't feel too confident. And so we've actually run this analysis here and said, what if you had a battery electric vehicle at a 100-mile range only? What would that look like? It turns out that 30% of the people are going to be stranded. And another 20% of the people are going to feel really anxious and really nervous about sort of pushing it to the limit, and they're actually not going to want to drive those vehicles. So half the population will not benefit from a 100-mile range. That range anxiety is real. I think there's a psychology to it. People want confidence to go where they want to, when they want to, and have the sort of peace of mind about their personal and family needs. So, we have a lot more to learn. We are well into the process of investigating new questions, investigating new sources of data, and we're going to work very closely with the Volt team. So, open up for questions.
I'm going to assume you have no way of determining which of those points are primary versus secondary household vehicles.
We do not know that.
Have you been able to, based on the sample, do you have any sense of possible Volt customers versus not likely Volt customers based on the geography? Have you looked at where you're likely to see Volts, if that changes any? I mean, is an LA driver 50% likely to be able to do their trips without recharging versus 35%?
You might imagine that we have a perspective on what kind of current drivers might be Volt contenders, and you might imagine that we think about what geographies we got to pull our samples from.
But, so is this a representative
Yes.
geography of potential Volt customers versus just a random sample?
It's a representative sample.
So is it random? Because I take the subway to work. I do in-town driving. I think 100 miles is actually seems pretty well. So you're saying you pick data for likely Volt customers? Is that what you said?
We picked likely intenders of customers. Now, very real question about will people's behavior change if they know they're driving a vehicle that has a limited range of 100 miles. I think you're going to get some self-selection going on. You're going to get a change of behavior for sure. I think the Chevy Volt solution addresses those concerns and those needs and provides a solution that 90% of the time you're going to be driving 90% of your trips on pure electric.
I think one of the important points of note is not to get a little too enamored by the data per se and more by the capability. Because again, as Nick indicated, we said, let's just pull the latest data that comes off and we've, targeted a few areas just as samples in a few vehicle segments. These are existing GM customers, and the data came as the data came. So I think what's really interesting is the capability that we have here going forward that effectively no one has. I mean, many people can pass out clipboards to their customers and say, take a data of how you're driving. I'll even go as far as saying I would say that the government doesn't have this kind of, even approaching this kind of capability when we talk about the BMT cycles and some of the learnings there. So to have this capability to understand how your customers use your product before the product is introduced, and with a very unique product, we think is a tremendous opportunity for us. And again, obviously, this whole lab facility that Walt and the guys have so graciously put in place to help facilitate us. We've got a lot of interesting studies going on. There's studies that help the engineers diagnose the problems. There's studies that'll help service people service the vehicles, the batteries, et cetera, et cetera. There's the getting to know the customer side of it. And there's other partners that we're going to have to interact with, whether it be charging infrastructure people, whether it be electric utilities, et cetera, et cetera. And some of those stories will unfold in the coming months. But again, the data that Dana shared was real live data. If you looked at some of the data that was being processed, you can see literally the last data pull might have been at noon today, and the state of charge of the battery was something in the 30% range, and you can say to yourself, I bet you that guy is driving right now on range extender mode, literally as we spoke. And there may have been a pull in the morning where somebody was at a higher state of charge, if you will. So this guy is going to run some duty cycle today that's electric vehicle battery only cycle.
That was actually a question I had when I saw that 32%. I thought you guys only drew it down to 70%. So is that your usable state of charge being measured, or what's?
So just from a reference point, if you assume that there's a 0 to 100, we've always said we use about half of the battery. So it's not the exact that we'll wind up at, but assume that 30 to 80 is what we use. So when you see it at around 30, it means it's probably about ready to kick into range extender mode. And if you see the number closer to the 80, it means, and we can talk a little bit about the car as I do some of the closing comments, that particular vehicle is on the node here, and based on the way the green light is blinking, I can tell you roughly what the state of charge is going to be on that vehicle since it's been plugged in for a period of time right now. And oh, by the way, there's your standard 110, 120 volt outlet, right off the shelf, nothing special, charging the vehicle.